I'm back. I'm not sure anyone asked me about this, but I'm going to talk about it anyway because I think some people will find it interesting, and that's my Etsy business. So I started doing things on Etsy for a lot of the same reason I started running parties. Number one, I thought it would be kind of cool to try that aspect of things, and two, I wanted to try to make this hobby of Nerf that I have so overinvested in, spent so much of my resources and time in. I wanted to have it work a bit more towards breaking even or paying for itself, which, you know, is kind of a cool thing, really, because if you get into driving Harleys, your bike doesn't pay you anything. So I really was trying to do things more break even. Anyway, so my Etsy store, I started back in November with a few items on it, a lot of items where I'm licensing from other creators. I've sold a chunk of Domo blasters, Domachevsky, Genko Megaworks. I've sold some Lidl blasters, 01 Tech, and some parts from Paper Skeleton, of course, foam.blasted on Instagram. The Gauntlet XL, I sold a few over Etsy. I did a few before Etsy as well, but the last few I did over Etsy, the collaboration with foam.blasted. And, you know, it's gone pretty well. Like I'm pretty, you know, I feel pretty happy with that as kind of like one aspect of kind of the hobby side hustle. I've just crossed over 10,000 in sales on Etsy since last November. Now that sounds a little better than it is. And I'm going to say something, I don't want to sound ungrateful about anything because I'm super grateful, but I wanted to break down what does that actually mean. So first of all, with Etsy, when it's showing you kind of that dashboard, how much income you've made, it's including your delivery fees you're collecting that you're never going to be keeping because that's going to pay for your shipping. And it's before all the fees. So that over 10,000 after about, I might not be perfect with these numbers, but we're just chatting, 1,300 in Etsy fees probably. So, you know, you're looking at a little over 10% in fees overall. You get a lot of different fees for transactions into US to Canadian, fees for the listing, lots of fees for Etsy for sure. And then the delivery side of things, I think that was another 2,400. So in the end, you know, about a quarter of that 10,000 is fees and delivery. So still, that's really good. You know, I'm not complaining at all. But then you do have to figure in, and I this is supposed to be more informational for you guys, not excuses for like pricing and stuff. But I guess it's you know, it's all part of the conversation. When, you know, that's, let's say that's 7,000 or so that would be profit. You know, there's tax, there's income tax on that too. You have all your costs. And that's why when I'm doing stuff on Etsy, I really try to have a 50-60% markup on stuff. And I know people don't like hearing the word markup, but all markup really is, in my case, is paying for my time. And that's why I like things like the pre-soldered mod kits where I can actually add a lot of value just with my time instead of materials. That stuff like that is great. You know, I can add an extra option in Etsy, a little bit of value, and you know, anything I'm charging for my time is not a lot generally, in my opinion. You know, I think a lot of people are pretty good about pricing. I think we're all pretty familiar. If you've ever built a blaster or had a friend that did, you know, there's nothing cheaper about building your own blaster. I know in the Gauntlet XL, even the parts alone with the 3 motors that it uses and the flywheels, before I was getting wholesale orders for stuff, I think there was like $80 of parts in a Gauntlet, or maybe 70 US in like a 175, you know, Gauntlet. And then you have to build it and assemble it. It's no wonder that buying a completely assembled blaster is an expensive thing. So there's a lot of things in my store. You know, I look at the filament cost, and I use that as a base. I look at the license fees. I think of how difficult it is to assemble, and that's kind of how I set my prices. I really try to, you know, for bigger things, if it's getting too expensive, I do have 50% as a minimum, because out of that 50%, like there's more stuff being paid as well, like I said. And, you know, I have to be able to put in wholesale orders for things like motors, things like flywheels, to be able to sometimes to get prices down, but I'll fully admit, sometimes just if people are happy with the price, it just lets me increase my margin where I might lose margin on other things. That's why if you're an Etsy seller, you know, if you want to be careful, because if you do have mistakes with your orders or lost orders, I've had to do a couple of refunds for lost orders because I foolishly keep trying to ship to Australia. And, you know, it can really sting because it's a real noticeable chunk out of your profits. As far as Etsy having all those fees, I'm sure some of you would hear that and be like, oh my goodness, like why use Etsy? I have to say, what it does as far as creating shipping labels and ease in packaging and shipping things out is amazing. As some countries require special VAT numbers or special conditions or to show that you've paid some sort of GST. And Etsy does all that for you on the labels. It's really handy, really well done. All the analytics are really good for it. And the other kind of thing from it too is 75% of my sales are sales that someone found me on Etsy, you know, so, or were directed there from the Etsy search or whatever. So, you know, in a lot of ways, Etsy's kind of like the Amazon of, you know, homemade things. So just being on Etsy, I'm sure has gotten a lot of sales through their different ways that they generate traffic. And, you know, for me too, I'm lucky that with the channel, I can talk about different items and usually I'll see a little bit of a boost there too. So, you know, that's a bit of a background on that. So, but just, you know, for that note of reference, if you're thinking of doing it, I know a lot of people have I see their prices are pretty low. You got to account for like failed prints and stuff like that too. That's another thing. That's why I usually try to go over 50% markup. I kind of want at least 50% after assuming the odd failed print, after my packing materials, paper, ink, toner. You have to consider all of your costs. And yeah, so on that, say 10,000 of sales, we take away 1,200 or so for fees, 2,500 or so for shipping. Then you have 7 left. Maybe let's say I did a really good job with my margins and it is like 60, 75% there. Maybe I made almost 5,000. Then I have to pay taxes on that. And then I have to, yeah, I mean, it's good. Like since last November, it's not nothing, that's for sure, but it's a lot of hard work. I've had a lot of nights where I'm like, oh, I need to get this stuff assembled, or maybe I had a printer go down and I had to work on that. So again, not complaining. I enjoy that as another aspect of the hobby. I'm doing it more to kind of help me keep the channel going and grow it rather than I am kind of like a full income stream. I mean, I think the main way with a lot of this stuff to make money is you have to do volume, you know, which is why, you know, my prices are a bit higher than some others for sure. And I don't really get into competing that much on price. I just, you know, have kind of a standard I ship things out at and try to keep it that. And I've had some good reviews and a lot of people have been repeat customers and everything, and that's great. If you see something of mine and you're absolutely like, there's no way I am paying that at all, you know, I definitely encourage you to check out Paper Skeletons 3D or Xbox Games if they have that item. You know, they're a little closer to you too. Maybe shipping will be a little better. Yeah, I mean, support all the people. So support all the people, and if you start doing it, make sure you're figuring out your true costs. Don't do all this work to not make any money. There's nothing wrong with making a little bit of money. No one's gouging anyone. It's just getting a little bit for your time. So yeah, I guess that's mostly what I wanted to say about kind of my Etsy experience. Overall, it's been really positive. I've enjoyed doing the pre-soldered mod kits. I have videos on those if you don't know about those. I've done them from the Moto Blitz, the Demolisher. I did one right now for the Blue Shock. Thanks so much to Buff Daddy Nerf and all the cages he's created, and, you know, chatting with him about asking if, you know, permission and everything, and he was completely fine with using all of those cages, so that's been super helpful. But it's also leading me to want to create more of my own things. I know Paper Skeletons, his store is a lot of stuff that he creates, so that obviously that helps you with margin because you're not licensing things. So I want to get into more CAD projects. For the Fortnite Blue Shock, I've created a stock attachment point for that, It has a wire channel pass through because the battery is in the stock of the Nerf Blue Shock, and I've created kind of a little adapter so that it can extend that stock out, because the big complaint about that blaster is it had a miserably tiny stock. So yeah, I'm gonna have that up on my store, and that's kind of fun because I invested some time in an evening to make that. But then you don't have that, you don't have those fees, but then you're investing even more time. So I guess in the end, you better make sure you're enjoying it if you're investing all this time into doing it. So that's my little bits about Etsy. If you're ever interested in a pre-soldered mod kit, or especially, let me know. I've really been enjoying those too, not just because it makes me a little bit of money, but honestly, I've had so many people be like, this is my first flywheel blaster or my first modded flywheel blaster, and seeing people install those and getting pictures and people saying they're hooked, that's really cool. That's really, really cool. Like I really have kind of had the feels about taking away a little bit of a barrier that frightened people about, soldering's not frightening isn't even the right word, but just it's a big investment to get all those tools and everything, especially if you're younger. I've had, some teens buy mod kits and stuff too. It's a lot of stuff to invest in. And you're still, you're still dremeling, you're still modding, you're still doing it all. It's just you don't have to do that soldering. And I love anything that encourages more people to get into it. So that's the scoop on Etsy. Let me know if you have any questions about my Etsy experience. Let me know if you think those margins are just that margin goal of like 60% ideally, because that way if I fail, I'm still getting 50. Let me know if you're like, oh, bro, that's crazy. If you are, you've probably never sold anything, but I'm happy to hear it and discuss it with you. And yeah, I just want to I like being transparent. I like having these chats, to whether it's to my own detriment or not, but go out and support all of your Nerf community sellers. Get out there and support Out of Darts. Get out there and support the little sellers, the big sellers. Support all those people who come out to the games and are, just a bunch of great people. And, I might have moved to getting some wholesale orders these days from Worker, just to, again, to get those margins down, wholesaling flywheels and motors. But if you're just starting out, boy, you can't go wrong with, you're not everyone's looking to wholesale, 50 units of something at a time. Get out there and get some kits from Out of Darts. That's where I get started. Or, link up with a good shop that you know. I'm just rambling now. I like to spread the word. So I hope you enjoyed this and found it interesting. It's probably too long. Also, sorry about the shake. It's a little windy out here. For some reason, I've got it in my head that these casual chats are always outside on my deck. I could just be inside, but for me, it differentiates it. I don't know. It's just a weird mental thing. All right, bye. I've been trying to avoid add-ons like this, but I will say, if you're starting a store, save all of the boxes that come in. You don't want to spend money on boxes. Amazon boxes, blaster boxes, you can ship anything in those boxes. Don't buy boxes. I had to buy one box of boxes at one point just because I was desperate for some shipping containers, and it hurt my heart. Anyway, little tip for you.